Hey all, Tom Moran here from Tom's Big Spiders. This episode we're going to be rehousing 3 tarantulas of 2 different species, 2 Psalmopoeus species. First one is Psalmopoeus emeraldus, and the second one is Psalmopoeus langenbusheri. I got both of these guys a year or so ago. Well, one of them a couple months ago, one of them over a year ago, and they've been growing really fast and need rehousings. And we actually planned to do this one last week, but things didn't pan out, so we're doing them today. And this, of course, will be a husbandry video. We'll talk a bit about the care and some tips on keeping these species. Now, I love Psalmopoeus species. I've been trying to collect every single one of them out there. And it's funny because at first, when I first started getting into tarantulas, I had no interest whatsoever in any of the arboreals. For the most part, I had a couple of vicularia, which I like, Carabiner versicolor, and then I really got into Poecilotheria that I love. But then I got a Psalmopoeus cambridgei and absolutely fell in love with the genus, and since then I've been trying to grab them all. So really excited to finally put this video out and show how these two are getting along in my collection. So enough of me talking, let's take a look at Psalmopoeus langenbusheri and Psalmopoeus emeraldus. All right, so this is actually take 3. I keep screwing up the name of one of these spiders, the names of one of these spiders, so we're going to try this again. We're rehousing 2 Psalmopoeus or Psalmopoeus species today. The first one is Psalmopoeus emeraldus, not esmeraldus, which I keep saying, and I kept saying when we originally got them. The emerald chevron. We also have Psalmopoeus langenbucheri, or the Venezuelan chevron. Now, the emeraldus I got for Father's Day in June 2023 from Fear Not Tarantulas. They were really tiny at that time, so I put them in smaller enclosures, but they've been growing like weeds, so it's time for a rehouse. And I believe the P. langenbusheri I got in the spring of 2022. I think I got them from Tom Patterson at Hardcore Arachnids. And at that point, we had shot this big, long video, and everything that could go wrong with the video went wrong. We had sound cut out. We had video cut out. We had one point where I rehoused a spider and called it the wrong thing. It was just a nightmare, so I never posted, unfortunately. But this one's been growing a little more slowly. Now, I believe the P. langenbusheri is the smallest Psalmopoeus species, with females reaching 3 to 4 inches, or 7.62 to 10.16 centimeters. And then I believe the emeraldus get a bit bigger, about 5 inches, 5.5 inches or so, which is 12.7 centimeters or larger. So we'll have to see. I noticed with some of the Psalmopoeus species, they tend to exaggerate how large you get, although my cambridgei is quite large. So what we're going to put them in is this here. Now, as slings, just to let people know, for slings, I usually put them either, if they're teeny tiny slings, in dram vials, or if they're larger slings, a 20-ounce to 30-ounce deli cup would work great. I like the 20-ounce ones because they're not so high that they get lost in it, but not as shallow as the 16-ounce deli cups. And as for the 30-ounce to 32-ounce deli cups, there's obviously a hobby staple as far as keeping fossorial or arboreal species. Now, a note with these guys, they dig, and when they're smaller. I've seen a lot of stuff lately online with people putting arboreal species, smaller arboreal species, in enclosures that don't permit them to do some burrowing. They like to do some burrowing. They are closely related to Ephebopus. And Ephebopus, of course, like to burrow. So a lot of them, when they're smaller, will burrow. So make sure whatever you give them some depth so they can dig. Now, what we're going to be putting them into here is the juvenile enclosure. I love these. They're large food storage containers. I get them on Amazon. They're like for right now, they're on sale for like $22 or so. They're, I think, perfect for arboreal or fossorial species. And the enclosures are really easy to drill out, to make the holes in, to make sure that there's adequate ventilation. They are a little bit milky, but again, this is not going to be its forever home. This is while it is a juvenile. I see one of the big mistakes, well, not mistakes, but something I don't necessarily agree with because it can lead to issues, is folks who have a juvenile, they want to buy something really fancy to show it off, and they put it in an enclosure that isn't quite right for a juvenile. So, for example, juveniles will still continue to do some burrowing. They'll spend a lot of time. What they'll usually do is web around the actual cork bark in here. They'll do some webbing. They'll pull in some of this moss, make a nice little area, and they won't sit out like true arboreals right on top. They'll be hiding behind the back. And a lot of them will do a little bit of digging in the substrates. You want to make sure you give them deeper substrate. So A, it doesn't dry out, because these are species that I like to keep a bit moist. And B, so that they have room to burrow if they choose. When they get a bit older, I've had some that continue to do a little bit of burrowing. They'll sit out in the surface. When you disturb them, they go back in their burrows and hide underneath. So just something to keep in mind if you're keeping Psalmopoeus species or any of the other, Lampropelma, Ornithoctoni, any of the Asian arboreal species, the Poecilotheria species. A lot of those as slings will start off I won't use semi-fossorial, but they will do some digging. So make sure whatever you give them, if you end up using one of, I know a lot of folks like the acrylic enclosures. If you pick up a fancy acrylic enclosure, make sure that there's enough depth to put a decent amount of substrate in it. So that's my plea to people out there, because I've had a lot of folks lately that have issues with their spiders either not settling in or being a little bit more defensive. And I look at the enclosures and they're just not set up appropriately for that one. So this one here, just to show what we've got in it, the enclosure itself measures 7.5 inches, 7.5 inches by 9.1 inches tall, or 19 by 19 by 23.11 centimeters. And again, they're great for arboreals and fossorials. And what we have inside is I put a couple different cork bark hides here. We have a major one in back, a big one in back here. I would, cork bark rounds would work great. Unfortunately, I'm out of cork bark rounds. So what we do is kind of get the ones that are somewhat rounded and use the back to position them so they have a little round hidey hole in there. I put sphagnum moss behind it so that it can use that sphagnum moss to feel more secure. They like tight places. They don't want a big vacuous area they're not going to feel secure in. And then I have another little one over here because I've had some of them that choose the lower one. So we'll see how it goes. And each of these has two, so we gave it a choice. We have the cork bark, we have leaf litter because it looks nice, sphagnum moss, and after we're done, we will drop in water dishes. All right. So a lot of talking for the beginning of this video. If you're one of the people that just joined us, because I'm getting a lot of folks are finding me from my shorts, and I think they're probably shocked and see how wordy I am once they get into the actual real video. So this is what we do. We like to explain every aspect of the hobby to people so that they're comfortable in keeping these guys correctly. So this one here, I want to point out, this is some of that nasty fungus mold stuff that actually turns into giant alien-like mushrooms. It's not hazardous or dangerous to the spider at all. It has kind of a sweet smell to it. It can be yellowish or kind of white. And what will happen is eventually you'll see these little sprouts come up, and they're kind of weird. I have the other one dried up. I pulled one out that I was going to show people, but then we didn't shoot the video. I thought I was. But anyway, they're not hazardous to the spider. They just look terrible. So if you see this in here, don't freak out. It means things are probably, obviously it's a bit moist, but I've had enclosures almost completely dry with great airflow that I've had this stuff take hold in. So what we're going to do, we're not going to play around with these guys because they are so, they're fast spiders. They can be potentially defensive if cornered. And I don't want a situation where one gets out and about. So we're not going to play around, but I was able to get some footage of both species when they were just sitting right up. They were very nice to me, sat right up on the top, and I was able to get a few minutes of footage. So if it comes down to it, Billy can't get good footage, I will flash those up so you guys can see what they look like, because they are beautiful. And now I'm looking here, slings, it looks like these guys I did start. Actually, I think I just unboxed them. Yeah, this is what they came in. This was the original thing they came in. So what I did was just put it in there. Sometimes it's easier to just drop the old enclosure in, let them come out on their own. It won't really work for this one. Plus, I don't want this mold in there because what I'm seeing down here is fuzzy mold, and that is not something I particularly want. Again, not dangerous to them, but it means it's too dank. There's not enough airflow. And I think part of the problem was I added moisture to these guys the other day and I overdid it. So we're going to go ahead and open this up. Let me get one of my, oh, there it is. So let's see if Billy can get a shot of that fuzzy little dude. And again, if you don't panic if you're having a hard time getting a good shot of it, because, oh my gosh. Oh, and there it goes. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to pick this up. We're going to move it over here and try to use the brush to prod it gently. No. Oh, I just don't want it to go up the tong. So let's do this. Oh, you little booger. So what we may do is take this out, put it in here so it gets out and about. The paper towels in the corner is because if they bolt, what the paper towels allow for is the spider. They usually run around the side of something. They will get underneath the paper towels. They'll feel secure, and they'll stop running for a bit, and allows you to cup them. No, you little booger. There we go. There we go. Right up in the top. And right in there. And underneath the leaf. So I do have footage of that one that I can show later on. I did get some good shots of it, though. It looks like you got some really good shots of it too. And that's one of the nice things about the leaf litter too. If you look down in there, It's hiding right beneath the leaf litter right in there. So it's allowing it to feel secure, so it's not bolting. If that leaf litter were not there, that spider would either hopefully end up behind here, but could end up over the edge and out and about. So that's the trick, giving them places that feel secure as soon as they get into them. All right, round 1 done. Round 2 with the crickets going in the background. Oh my gosh. And I am getting over a brief cold, so if I'm a little froggy, well, I think I dodged getting a really bad one. So where's this one? This one is right in here. We'll see how this goes. And it's funny because I've had people, we talk about Psalmopoeus being a stepping stone species for folks who want to keep Poecilotheria. And honestly, I find Poecilotheria to be much more easy to manage than some of the, not that I've had any problems with Psalmopoeus species or Psalmopoeus, just these guys tend to be a little more inclined to bolt and boogie, where I haven't had that issue with Poecilotheria at all. So just to note, people will be like, are they easier than Poecilotheria? Well, no, I actually find them to be a bit more difficult, or potentially more difficult. All right, so there's a little dude right in there. Let's get this out of the way. Yeah, you're going to go right in there. No. Booger. There you go. Boom. I'm going to get the top ready as Billy gets maybe a shot of it. All right, let's get this up before it goes. There we go. Boop. I don't know if you saw how quickly it just moved. It went from there up here and down there in like a split second. So they are a moment to take a moment to talk about behavior. I've found that you can keep them calm, but if they get jacked up, if they're out in the open, they're a little more likely than most arboreal species to stand their ground a bit. There is a belief out there, because they lack urticating hairs or bristles, and those are irritating bristles that New World spiders can kick off as defense, that their venom might be a little more potent. I don't know if that's been scientifically proven, but it sounds good on paper. So they might be a little more inclined to use that venom if they're cornered. But I found they're very easy to control overall. The problem with them is this is one of the species, or one of the genera of tarantulas, that folks will refer to as teleporters, because especially when they're teeny tiny slings, they can really move. Oh, and a note about the water dishes. I did have little bottle cap water dishes in the other enclosures. We were going to do these rehousings a little earlier, and I plucked them out because they get in the way when I do the rehousing. So I don't want people to think I didn't have water dishes in there. But this one has had, I think, 2 or 3 now. And this is the Langenbucheri, which is a beautiful one, taking its time to grow. Oh, there it is. Like a little fat, probably a molt coming soon. Cute little booger.
Very fuzzy.
Yeah, I like the little fuzzy legs. Hope they keep them.
A little blue on his tips of his legs too.
Oh yeah, it's like the baboon species have a. Very nice. All right, so we got some good footage of these guys here. So what we're going to do now is get this one in its new home. What I want to keep these things doing is bolting. No. This is where you cue the Benny Hill music. You're not going to make this easy for me, are you? Nope. Not out, in. There we go. Right up to the top. So you can direct this one right in here. And right around the back is exactly what we want. All right, so again, I will be adding water dishes to these after the fact. I have a lot of folks ask why don't I put them in ahead of time, because sometimes it decreases your maneuverability when you're trying to get the spider where you need it. So I do have the little deli cups that I use, and we'll drop those in. So there we go. Those are rehoused. Now, this is what I use for juvenile enclosures. Feel free to use what fits for you. For adult enclosures, because of the size of these guys, I like the 8x8x12 Exoterra size enclosures are good as long as they get under 5 inches or so. I wouldn't keep some of the other Psalmopoeus species in them because they get a little large. So for example, my Cambridgei would probably be too large for an enclosure that size, but 8x8x12 or 20.32 by 20.32 by 30.5 centimeter enclosures were great for the smaller species of Psalmopoeus. Again, you want to put a few inches of substrate in there at least. I can tell you my Victorii and 2 Reduncus still do some burrowing. They have burrows, web burrows behind their cork bark, and they hide in there. One of my Reduncus actually has a flat-out burrow with 2 entrances. Like, it doesn't live arboreally at all. So that's something to keep in mind when housing them, to make sure whatever you put them in allows you to give them a bit of substrate. As far as moisture, I do think keep it moist when they're slings. I keep it moist when they're juveniles, and I keep part of it moist at all times when they're adults, and then water dishes. Feeding, these guys are usually voracious eaters as teeny tiny slings. Small crickets or roaches work fine, small mealworms. If they're super teeny tiny and you don't have anything big enough, they usually have a little web entrances. You can pre-kill whatever it is you're going to feed them and drop it at the web entrance. But usually once they put on a little bit of size, they're eating the small ones. Juveniles, medium to large, and then large, obviously large crickets, medium roaches, large dubia would work for a large adult. And then behavior, as we mentioned, they're usually shy and skittish, but if cornered, expect a little bit of attitude. So there we go, Psalmopoeus emeraldus. I don't know if I slipped a name point during this, but I so desperately want to call them emeraldus. And Psalmopoeus langenbusheri, awesome spiders. And again, maybe while I'm talking here, I'll flash up some of the shots I got of them so people can see how beautiful they are. I'm trying to get all of the Psalmopoeus species at some point, and I think this is it with these 2. I think I've got them all, which is pretty awesome. So awesome spiders, and those of you that like arboreals, definitely something to check out. So again, I always try to stress behavior can differ from specimen to specimen. So although I may have a Langenbucheri that's very laid back, somebody else may have one that's high strung. However, having kept several species of Psalmopoeus, I found that most of them, although they will bolt if disturbed or frightened, they usually don't want to stand their ground first. If they're cornered and they feel like they have no other alternative, then yes, you might get a threat posture, and that's something nobody really wants to see. Also, I've been seeing a lot of instances lately of people keeping the arboreal species and setting them up immediately as arboreals, as slings and juveniles. And in my estimation, in my opinion, this is a mistake. For many types of spiders, especially ones that turn out to be arboreals, the slings actually stay close to the ground, do a little burrowing. They hide behind wood. They will hide in tree roots and areas like that. So a lot of them almost have somewhat fossorial tendencies earlier on, and Psalmopoeus would qualify for this. So unfortunately, I see things out there where people find these really cool cage designs that they love, and they want to put their spider in it and make it an arboreal, but it's not ready to do so. So always remember, when you're setting up enclosures, find something that's appropriate for the spider. If it's a sling and juvenile and one of these arboreal species that will do some burrowing early on, make sure that that litter dam offers enough space to put in at least a couple inches of substrate. For the moisture-dependent species, that it makes it easier to keep that substrate moist and keep it from drying out too quickly. And B, you want to give them room to dig. I have a couple Reduncus that have continued to do some burrowing. They've webbed up. They don't go up top at all. So if that's something the spider wants to do, let's make sure we give the spider the opportunity to do so. So that will do it for this one. As always, if you liked it enough to subscribe, very much appreciated. You click the little circle up in there. I'm going to put my Psalmopoeus genus review over here, something else up here. We'll see. As always, if you take the time to comment, I will take the time to reply. Just know it could take me a couple days. Guys, stay safe. We'll catch you all next time.